How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivera. Post-game from the first preseason game between the Giants and New England Patriots, and a lot of good takeaways, some injuries. We'll update you guys on everything. If you want to see the highlights, any of the main takeaways, go to my Twitter, Alex Wilson ESM, and you can find all of the main stuff, like the specific individual plays, some specific individual standout performances. And a lot of good takeaways there. So, if you're looking for the major stuff, if you missed the game or want to look it back over, I posted everything there for you guys, so you can see it. But, right off the bat here, Giants got the ball first, a little bit different than the Joe Judge era when we would always defer, get the defense on the field and try to stop them because our offense would never be able to do anything. We went aggressive, got the ball, moved down the field, and scored 3 points in the first drive. And we learned a lot on that first drive. We saw some Evan Neal. We saw some Darius Slayton. We saw some Saquon Barkley do some really interesting things. So I'm excited to discuss that, Anthony. Before we dive into it, how is your night going? And, man, it's exciting to get some Giants football back or what?
Yeah, man, super exciting. Very happy to see the New York Giants back on the football field, back playing on the MetLife turf. And you know what? We've got a long season ahead, and today was just a little glimpse of what we might be seeing. So it was very exciting to see the Giants hit the field once again. Preseason game, preseason opener versus the New England Patriots. Of course, they were on the road, not actually at MetLife, but hopefully soon enough we'll get to watch them kick some butt over in MetLife. But right now, taking a look at what the Giants were doing today, they did come away with a pretty solid victory against the Patriots backups. But, when you watch this game, and you take a look at what Daniel Jones was doing in the first quarter, that's going to be the discussion here no matter what. Everyone's going to talk about Daniel Jones versus Tyrod Taylor, and then, of course, versus Davis Webb, who actually goes out there and plays some pretty solid football. The quarterback is always going to be the discussion of the New York Giants, at least for the rest of the year, until it gets solidified. If Daniel Jones starts to play well throughout the preseason, then Giants fans will start to be high on him. But right now, it's kind of hard to be. He only got a couple of drives here, and he didn't really get an opportunity to show off too much. The Giants didn't do too much with creativity in terms of either offense or defense. Wink Martindale got in his bag of tricks just a little bit here and there. But generally speaking, the Giants are trying to keep a lot of their stuff under wraps for the regular season. But right now, there are quite a few solid performers, young guys who are stepping up to the plate, and they've got me pretty excited for the future of the Giants going into the regular season.
Absolutely. I mean, right off the bat, let's discuss Evan Neal. So Evan Neal had a couple of, iffy snaps, but he had one snap specifically that I was very impressed by where Darius Slayton caught a screen pass and he ended up 30 yards downfield blocking for Slayton. Slayton had his hand on his back and he was just chugging along. So that was really nice to see that Evan Neal has that speed and athleticism to get way out in front. He forgot the second level. He was all the way downfield leading the charge while guys were trying to get to Darius Slayton. So that was a really good sign. Evan Neal showcasing that athleticism he does contain and had a couple of really good pass blocking snaps. What really I found is that he won the rep early on, but then would lose the rep kind of towards the latter portion. But by the time that he ended up getting beat, Daniel Jones had plenty of time to actually make a decision. Whereas in the past, Nate Solder would be destroyed instantaneously and the guy would be in Daniel Jones's lap. So what I saw in that first drive was actually a couple of really nice pockets for Daniel Jones. I haven't seen a pocket. The only pocket I've been seeing is hot pockets lately. So, this guy did not have any pockets the past year or so. And it was really nice to see that, I posted on Twitter, kind of drew a little line of the pocket that he did have today. And it was great, having some protection. This is going to be hopefully a frequent trend for Daniel Jones moving forward in the rebuilt offensive line. Mark Lewinsky looked good. Andrew Thomas looked good. Got out to the second level a couple times there until he was pulled after the first drive. Daniel Jones almost got his knees taken out. Gary Brightwell was absolutely demolished, so that was not a good look. They pulled him immediately after that. But overall, I was really impressed. Saquon Barkley got heavily involved. He had 6 touches in the first drive, which was pretty awesome. And he looked pretty good. He had one route that he a little out route, little stutter step, gun to the outside, nice pickup and got a first down. Obviously showcasing what he can do as a receiver. Saquon has really underwhelmed the last couple of years as a receiver, not because of him, but mainly because of the system and scheme that they haven't really extrapolated on his strengths as a receiver. So it's nice to see that they're getting him involved. They're really building on that, and he showcased some of that flexibility and creativity early on in this game. So that was great to see. What are your thoughts on Saquon, Evan Neal, and some of these guys kind of showcasing a bit of positivity that we can take away with and move forward?
Yeah, I think Saquon Barkley looked quick. He looked agile. He looked electric when he had the ball in his hands. I really liked that little out route that he caught out of the backfield from Daniel Jones. I like the throw from Daniel Jones to lead him towards the sideline. It was accurate. It wasn't behind him by any means. So I like what I saw from Saquon Barkley. I think Daniel Jones looked pretty quick. He scrambled through that one pocket for a 6 yard gain, and that was a solid play just to kind of bail on what he knew wasn't there. That was a solid play by Daniel Jones. Evan Neal had his moments. He had his ups and downs, but you know what? That's what we expect from a rookie offensive tackle. We remember how Andrew Thomas was just 2 years ago when he was a rookie. There were a lot of ups and downs with Andrew Thomas. I don't expect anything different from Evan Neal. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out with Evan Neal in his rookie season. But I think this was a solid introduction for him into the regular season or into the preseason. First time stepping on an NFL football field. And I think that he was impressive at times, but there are things to work on. And we've known that all throughout training camp. It's been the same story. At times, super impressive, very dominant, looks like maybe the best offensive tackle out there. And then other times, you're like, okay, he's a rookie. He needs to work on that. And that's what you're going to see from Evan Neal throughout the preseason and probably for a good portion of the regular season as well. But you just got to stay patient with a young guy like that. That's really what it is. You got to stay patient. One of the other players that played, of course, in the first team that I thought was a little bit interesting was Kenny Galladay. I don't think he had the best effort on the field today. He had a bad drop. He ran a couple lazy routes. I'm starting to get a little concerned with Kenny Galladay. He's been a little concerning through training camp. He was definitely a concern last season when he barely showed up to most of the games. Can't really tell if that was totally his fault or if it was Jason Garrett's. But now, starting to think maybe some of it might have been Galladay's fault of his own because he hasn't looked too impressive in training camp and he didn't look too impressive tonight. So I am showing a little bit of concern there. Of course, no Kadarius Toney tonight. Darius Slayton caught a nice screen pass. I thought that was interesting to see the Giants start to work in some manufactured plays early on in the preseason, which I really like to see. And overall, it's kind of a lukewarm performance from the Giants' first team offense, which we weren't hoping for considering they were going up against the backups for the Patriots. But you know what? It is the first time that these guys are hitting a football field and playing under this offensive scheme. So stay patient with it. It'll all get better soon, Giants fans.
Yeah, well, speaking of getting better, let's talk about some negatives. And there's a couple. And, I sent out a tweet earlier, a little bit of a prayer circle to keep the Giants healthy. That obviously did not work. Not enough people prayed because, goodness gracious, we walked away with some serious ones. So Shane Lemieux already out in a walking boot with a toe injury. That sounds like a fractured toe to me. I don't know why he'd have a boot on already, maybe crutches, but definitely not a good sign for Shane Lemieux, who's coming off that partially torn patellar tendon last season. Jamil Douglas also lost with an ankle injury. He was knocked out of the game. On top of that, I just saw Cordell Flott has been knocked out of the game with a groin injury. And after what we saw from Aaron Robinson today, goodness gracious, we need more CB depth. Oh my God. I do not trust Aaron Robinson after this performance today. He was getting toasted by backup receivers for the Patriots. He got destroyed on 2 consecutive plays. One of them, he broke up the pass, but the ball was severely underthrown. And then he got destroyed in the end zone. This is a guy that we need to step up. He is the projected CB2. He's got to perform better. He needs to show more urgency. He's got to use that speed, athleticism, and physicality to his advantage. And clearly, he just did not show up today to play. Hopefully, he puts together some better performances in the next 2 preseason games. But that definitely was not a good one. Those are the primary injuries. Kenny Galladay also looked rather lazy. Again, preseason, so I don't expect these guys on the first team to be going 100%. Wan'Dale Robinson barely even got a look. He didn't even get a target. But Joe Shane said during the game that they expect him to be heavily involved. So that's definitely a big piece for them moving forward. But you know what? Like these injuries, man, already starting to mount at some key positions. Josh Azudu had a couple of good snaps, a penalty, a couple of bad snaps. But he did show some good positive plays. So that's something to take away and move forward with. We're going to see a lot more of him in the coming weeks. I imagine if Shane Lemieux is forced to miss any given amount of time, and if he's in a walking boot, I imagine he's not going to be on the field for at least a couple of weeks. We'll update you guys on that, obviously, when we have more information. But what are your early impressions? Injuries to the offensive line, injuries to Cordell Flott. This is not exactly what we wanted going to the first preseason game.
Yeah, Cordell Flott was looking good before his injury, which is super disappointing to see that he got knocked out. Aaron Robinson, I'm very concerned with him. Of course, that wasn't a pick from this regime. So keep an eye on this one because he hasn't been performing too well during training camp. He's gotten into some fights with some players. He has no ties to this coaching staff. He has no ties to this front office. This is one of Dave Gettleman's guys that Dave Gettleman traded up for. Joe Shane didn't trade up for him. So keep that in mind as we inch closer towards the regular season. There's always some roster shuffling. This could be a guy that surprisingly gets cut or traded before the regular season rolls around. That wouldn't shock me at all. There were a lot of teams that were high on him. You don't know if the Bills were high on him last year, but with Aaron Robinson, we know Philly was high on him and some other teams, but the Giants traded up to get him. And so far, he has not really lived up to expectations. He hasn't been too impressive during training camp, as I mentioned. And today, not the best performance in this preseason game. But talking about the offensive line as well, as you mentioned, some seriously concerning injuries. One thing that I'll say, though, silver lining, Josh Azidu looks pretty good. We're really excited about Josh Azidu. We're very high on him. Really liked what we saw from him on his tape during his time at UNC. And I really loved that pick in the third round with the 67th overall pick in this year's draft. And I'm hoping to see him maybe work his way into the starting lineup at some point later on this season. Now, I still think that Shane Lemieux is going to win the starting left guard job by the time the regular season rolls around. I think he'll be healthy. Walking boots can sometimes mean you're in them for 3 days. Sometimes it means you're in them for a month. We'll see. That's to be determined. I don't want to get too afraid about Shane Lemieux's injury just yet. I'm going to wait for some of the details. From what I heard, it's a toe injury. Toe injuries, toe turf, that stuff can be pretty bad to have a jammed toe or a broken toe. It could totally screw up the way you walk and the way you run. But give it some time. Those usually don't take too long to heal. And then, of course, talking about Jamil Douglas, that's also a big blow to the Giants' offensive line because we've been talking about the center depth for a couple weeks now. We've been talking about how John Feliciano is dealing with his injuries, his heat wave injuries and dehydration. And then we had Shane Lemieux step in, Ben Bredesen step in, Jamil Douglas step in. There's a little bit of a revolving door there at center, and it seems like they might be happy with the depth that they have. But if the injuries continue to pile up, they won't be happy with it having no depth at all, right? So we need to see some of these guys stay healthy. That is a big blow to the backup Giants offensive line. Shane Lemieux, a huge blow to the starting offensive line in our pregame live stream. I mentioned specifically that I'm keeping a close eye on Shane Lemieux today, and I want to watch him play well because of the way his tumultuous career has set him up to somehow be the starter this year, which is very surprising, but that's what it is. We need to see him get healthy, play well, but thankfully, Joshua Azidu did look very good with the second team, and I do have some confidence in him if Shane Lemieux is not ready to roll by the time the regular season is here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Azudu, it looks like he's going to get that opportunity a little bit quicker than he imagined. But I do have more faith in him than I did Matt Skura, so there's that. But I will tell you what, or Ben Bredesen for that matter. So a couple of interesting players, though. One of my favorite players, two actually, from today. Actually, you know what? I'll throw in three players that I really like today. One, Richie James. He had a great little touchdown, really nice routes. These little Kadarius Toney, open the hips up, turnaround route. I don't even know how to even, the zig route, I guess maybe you could say. So really interesting there. Really ends up in the end zone, wide open. And Tyrod Taylor, good anticipation, great throw, easy touchdown for 7 points. So that was the Giants' first touchdown of the game. The second player, Colin Johnson, had a fumble, but otherwise was absolutely electric tonight. He finished with, let's see here. He finished with, I think, over 80 yards. Yeah, 82 yards, 7 receptions, 82 yards, and a fumble. So he was absolutely on fire. Hauled in 7 receptions on 8 targets. With a long of 17 yards, 11.7 yards on average per reception. So a really good performance from my guy, Colin Johnson, who's definitely has a fast track to make the roster after that. The fumble obviously sucked, but the guy came from behind and punched it out. Definitely just needs a little bit more anticipation. I don't think you can really, scoot around the production there. He's 6'6", one of the tallest receivers in the NFL, if not the tallest. So that definitely is a little bit of a bonus. Nice backup to Kenny Golladay, in my opinion, replicating his size. But the last guy I really, really liked today was Darian Beavers, rookie linebacker of Cincinnati. I have a legitimate beef with Tay Crowder, having that LB2 spot locked up. I do think that Darian Beavers is going to push him for that LB2 spot. He looked really good in the run game. He looked really good anticipating screen passes. He was just tremendous tonight. He was making plays. He wrapped up all of his tackles. He didn't miss any tackles. He's developed since getting to the Giants. He looked really good. Tay Crowder does not have that LB2 spot locked up. Micah McFadden also looked good with the third squad in the third and fourth quarter. So that was pretty nice. But I do think that ultimately Darian Beavers, that performance with him definitely justified me having a little bit more confidence that he might be able to push Tay Crowder. What do you think there? Because I know Tay Crowder definitely isn't the most athletic. He's not the best linebacker at all in general. So I think that, that position should be very much open for the taking.
I think it is open for the taking. I think this is a competition that's brewing right here towards the end of the end of the offseason, really. It's been all offseason, and Tay Crowder's kind of been penciled in as that LB2, but the draft picks came in. They had good workouts in the voluntary practices. It looked good during training camp. And now, of course, you've got the preseason rolling around, and Darian Beaver is out there making some plays, let me tell you. And I really like the fact that he's doing it with the green dot on his helmet, as I mentioned in the pregame live stream. Make sure to tune into those every week. Lots of fun. But with Darian Beavers having that, experience now, getting the play calls in from Wink Martindale, it makes him a much better player, or a player that you're much more confident in putting with the starters, right? Because he's already got that experience stepping in there, being the leader of a defensive unit. He's not, the starter on the first team, but he's a starter on the second team. So he's a starter of his own squad in his own right. And he's been leading them pretty well. And he's been making plays, leading by example on the football field, which you love to see. So I really wouldn't be shocked to see him steal that job. And another thing that I'll mention here, I just mentioned it with Aaron Robinson. This is not one of Joe Shane's guys, Tay Crowder. That is a Dave Gettleman draft pick. So don't be surprised to see the Giants move on from a player that wasn't drafted by this current regime, because they're going to say, hey, I don't know you. I don't really care about you. But this guy, I saw something on his tape. He's younger. He's faster. I like what he brings to the table, and he's my draft pick. So he's going to get a little more leeway and a little more leverage on this roster battle. So you could see that happen with guys like Micah McFadden, like Darian Beavers. And then you could unfortunately see guys like Tay Crowder maybe lose their positions, lose their jobs, and get buried on depth charts, maybe get traded for a conditional pick, maybe get cut and put on a waiver wire. That stuff is possible as these rosters get shuffled over the course of the next 3 weeks heading into the regular season. So keep an eye on something like that. Darian Beavers very impressive with the second team, and I think that he's going to continue to be. He's been very impressive in practice. I think there's a really good shot that he opens up the regular season starting alongside Blake Martinez.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And a couple more players that I did find to have some decent performances. Jayshon Corbin, rookie running back, undrafted free agent, looked pretty spry. He made a nice catch from Tyrod Taylor. So that was nice to see. A lot of running back depth on this team, actually. Behind Saquon, they got some pretty decent players. Matt Breida obviously leads the pack there in terms of backups. But Cordell Flott, rookie out of LSU, left with a groin injury. He looked pretty solid, had some nice plays, really nice open field tackle at one point. So I liked what I saw from him. And then Tyrod Taylor, man. Taylor had a pretty damn impressive game. As a backup, I think he might be the best backup in football, straight up. Like one of the best backup quarterbacks in football. Again, they're backups, so like they're supposed to not be that good. But Tyrod Taylor could start for some teams. He could probably start for the Giants, and they wouldn't be like a significant talent drop off from Daniel Jones. He's been successful in the past. If anything happens to DJ, I feel pretty confident in him, like going in there and like potentially winning football games for us. At least being competent, like, at least he's not a human giraffe. It doesn't have a neck the size of a freaking hockey stick. So I'm just happy that Tyrod Taylor, at the very least, offers a competent backup. He's not Jake Fromm. He's not going to settle for just QB sneaking in on second and third downs. He can throw the football. He has good anticipation. He's got a good touch on the deep passes, and he can read an NFL defense. And that's ultimately what you're looking for in a backup. Daniel Jones looked pretty composed today, but Tyrod Taylor with the second team looked pretty solid as well. So again, Daniel Jones is the starter. He is going to be the starter, but Tyrod, at least you have a competent backup there that could come in and fill in if need be, because, DJ has had his fair share of injury issues in the past with the hamstring, and then he had the neck injury last year, the concussion. There's a lot of things that have happened to him because he kind of likes to dive headfirst into defenders, which definitely is not ideal. But that was kind of like the main takeaways from this game. A lot of good stuff. Some injuries, but nobody like too serious. I mean, Shane Lemieux, of course, is a starting left guard for us, but the toe injury, hopefully it's nothing too serious. It wasn't like a torn Achilles or anything like that. So hopefully he'll be able to make a return in a couple of weeks here and rest up. But in the meantime, Josh Azuda will get those reps, and hopefully he can get better in the next couple of weeks before the regular season starts in about a month, exactly a month from now. But guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. Breaking down some of the main takeaways from this game. Of course, would love to hear your perspectives. If you have anything to add on that we missed or that we didn't cover, please, throw it in there. We'll cover it tomorrow. We're going to take a look at some other film and videos that I did take and, review them and make sure that you guys have all the necessary information to kind of get some good takeaways from this postseason, or rather this preseason game. So appreciate all the love and support. Make sure to like and subscribe below as always. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.